Yay! Today we're welcoming Tracy the Strategy Bee. Woohoo! So that is an interesting title. So you're known as both the Divorce Solutionist and the Family Court Strategist. What's the story behind those titles?
Well, the Divorce Solutionist is I wanted to give people the impression of what I do. I find solutions no matter what you're going through in divorce. We're going to find solutions. That's what a strategist does. We take data, we take your circumstances, and we, figure out what the pros and cons are, the strengths and weaknesses, and we come up with a plan. So Solutionist and I won a contest for that name. So I decided it was worth it. Yes, yes. Family court strategist is because, my background is I was a former family law attorney, and I wanted to distinguish myself from coaches, but I wanted to also have something that reflects some of what coaches do and what I do as a lawyer. So strategist was it, family court strategist. And family court is because my specialty is family court, the family court process, understanding every component, level, and direction of the family court process. So family court strategist, it is.
Oh, I love that. And you have that big smile, bubbly personality. So it's, because when you're going through a divorce or you have to go to any kind of family court, like there's so much pain and trauma and hurt in that process. It's always nice to have someone who is kind and encouraging and loving, to kind of help you get through. So I appreciate that for sure.
Yes.
So two-part question. What drew you to the world of family court advocacy, particularly for pro se litigants, but also what does pro se mean?
Pro se means self-represented. When you're pro se, it means you're actually handling your case at some point as your own advocate, your own everything. You don't have a lawyer, you're doing it yourself. I actually became interested in pro se representation and advocacy for pro se when I was actually in private practice, because a lot of people who came to me didn't have the resources or didn't have something to hire me, retain me. And so, I have a background in the mental health profession. So I still wanted to do something that was somewhat that tied the two. And so, this pro se advocacy was in the making for at least 20 years. But for the last 5 years is when I actually made it my mission, my passion, my path. And so, yes, that's what I do now. I'm a family court strategist, but I'm also a pro se advocate, where I'm advocating for pro se, specifically in family court, for their rights and the opportunity to be heard and to advocate for themselves. So yes, that's how I got into this, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I get to give back.
Oh, I love that. And I love that, it's kind of a two-part thing, right? It's just, the attorney piece and helping guide with the legal piece, but also the mental health piece, because, like I said before, that is so huge. It's just, it's a trauma. And so, you have that, to try to walk through, and you're walking through the most difficult parts of your life. And then, to have somebody that is confident in not only the law piece, but also is confident in the mental health and getting you through those pieces is like gold. Like you're a rare gem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you often say having the best lawyer or evidence doesn't matter. Well, that's a bold statement. How can you break that down for us?
Well, you know why? Because, and if you ask 10 people what are one of the main complaints they have about the family court process, they will tell you the judge ignores my evidence. The judge does not let me put in my evidence. The judge denies admission of my evidence. And it's strong and it's good. And then the other half, you'll hear them say, I showed the judge everything and they did nothing. They still ruled in the other party's favor. I don't understand. My evidence was rock solid. It was strong. It was cohesive. It was organized, but they ignored everything I submitted. You know why? Because the judges don't necessarily rule based on law or based on the facts. They rule based on their own logic. Whatever makes sense to your judge, that's what's probably going to fuel the way they rule in your case. And that's exactly the main reason why it doesn't matter how strong your evidence is. It doesn't matter how many pieces of evidence you have. It doesn't matter how many times you try to convince the judge to look at your evidence. If your judge is just in the mindset that it doesn't matter, you know, what you show them, because some judges, they make up their mind before you even present any evidence. Some of them make up their mind as soon as you walk into the courtroom. So you know what matters? What matters is your judge, believe it or not. Your judge. Who is your judge? What basis do they really typically make their decisions and rulings on? That's what's important. And once you start from there, I guess it's like a reverse engineering. Once you understand who your judge is, what their preferences are, what their biases are, then you can decide which evidence you're actually going to present to the judge. That's the way to do it.
That is amazing. Okay, so I'm a mom. I'm just going through divorce or I'm thinking about it and like, oh my gosh, this sounds really scary. So how does your program kind of come alongside or how do you kind of come alongside to help empower that? Because now you're saying, "Oh my gosh, I don't, the judge might not even hear my evidence." What is that? And what do I need to do?
And so that's why I'm a strategist, because we're not just focusing on the law. Family court is 80% strategy, 20% law. So the 80% of strategy, we're focusing on who is your judge? How do we find out who your judge is? How do we find out what he likes, who he likes? How do we find out if the dynamics of the courtroom and how the judge runs the courtroom? How do we find out who the opposing party's attorney is? How do we find out the relationship between them? How do we find out their respective backgrounds and how that's going to play? Because all those things matter. And then we focus on you. Sometimes I need to work with them on the way they show up in court, their demeanor, their verbiage, their expression, their behaviors. I mean, everything. So, and that's what we do. We focus on everything that's going to impact or influence your specific judge or the key players in your case in the courtroom. That's what we're going to do. So if that means we need to role play so that you can get used to speaking confidently in public, then that's what we're going to do. If it means I need to sort of give you some tools and some exercises so that you learn to not be so emotional, that you master your emotions when you're speaking to the judge, then that's what we're going to do. So we're focusing on the practical, the tactical, the logical, all those things, in addition to the mental and the emotional and the legal. We're going to focus on all of those things because that's what all of those things matter. And depending on who your judge is, you might have to put more emphasis on 2 or 3 of those things as opposed to the rest of them, depending on who your judge is. And that's important. That's exactly what I work on with my clients.
That is so incredibly empowering because I think that we are raised as a whole, it's changing a little bit, but we're raised as a whole that like when you get married, that's it, right? And so there's so much self defeating attitude and so much self-worth that just goes in the toilet when now it's like I have to admit to myself that, oh my gosh, this is not going to work, right? And so then by having the tools and giving them the tools to be able to strategize, not only do you have the evidence, but now you have a strategy to move forward that, to help your case. I think that that is so incredibly empowering.
It is. And that's my mission. I've always been the person in my family and my community that was rooting for the underdog. I was always been that person to say, yes, you can do it. You can do it. And this is exactly why I do this now, because now, when I was a lawyer, when I was in private practice, I couldn't say, hey, you can do it and spend most of the time on that because I had to focus on the legal exclusively. Now I can say, hey, I'm here for you. I'm your cheerleader. We're going to work on your confidence level. I'm going to, empower you. I'm going to inspire you. And that's a huge part of what we do when we're working together. So yes, that's exactly my intention, to empower and to help people restore their confidence. Yes.
I love that. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions about family court?
Oh my God. The number one is that everybody thinks, oh, the law says this and the judge didn't follow the law and the law. And guess what? Yes, it matters, but family court has the most discretion of any court in the legal field. That means that judges get to do primarily what they want and there's little oversight. So you know what that means? That means they get to apply the law when they feel like it, right? They get to apply the court rules of procedure when they feel like it or how they feel like applying them. And so why spend all your time mastering the law when you're going to go to court and the judge is going to do what they want to do anyway? And, people will say, well, because the law still applies. Well, yeah, but you need to win your argument. You need to win your position.
Yep.
If you know your judge is not going to apply the law the way it's supposed to be applied, why waste your time? Go in there and find out what he or she is going to apply, how they are going to apply it, and work from there. So that's the number one misconception. The number two is everybody thinks the judge is going to do what's best for the child, to keep the child safe, to make sure the child is protected, out of danger, make the child a priority. That is not it. That is not it. The judges, the family court, the whole structure of family court is designed theoretically for that, but from a practical standpoint, it is not. Family court happens to be one of the most dysfunctional places to actually find yourself in if you're making your child a priority. It really is. And so people think that they're going to, I'm going to run the court because the judge is going to do, whatever it takes to make sure my kids are safe. No, they're not. They're not. The judges usually have their own agenda. They have their own objectives, and it's not always bad. It's just not always keeping kids safe. And so
Yeah.
that's the most um assumed myth that a lot of people will take on. And then the third is that, oh, I have to go out and get this bulldog attorney because they're going to get me exactly what I want, and they're going to fight for me, and they're going to this, and they're going to this, and they're going to this. And that's not the case. Family court lawyers, family law attorneys have the highest dissatisfaction rate of all attorneys in this country. And there's a reason why, because family law is really, it's replete with everything else but practical, right? It's so much emotion. There's so much mental health issues, social issues. And so with all of those tied in, it's hard to find someone who's going to address all of those and go into court and advocate for you as well. So a lot of family court attorneys, although they mean well, and some of them are superb, but a lot of them don't have it in them, don't have the bandwidth to address the social and the mental and the emotional. They're really focusing on the legal. And so so a lot of people will think that having a bulldog or a high-priced attorney is going to guarantee them an outcome, the outcome they want. And that's just not the case. That's just not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true, I think. So what do you mean by, what are these insider secrets, and why aren't attorneys sharing those with their clients?
Because attorneys, it's twofold. One of them is because, and someone asked me this a few months ago. They asked me, oh, why does everybody gatekeep in family law? Because I guess, a lot of my audience wants me to answer questions definitively. I can't do that, right?
Yeah.
No lawyer is going to answer questions definitively whether you're their client or not. But one of the reasons why family law attorneys and any lawyer does that is because we answer a question. I've done this. I've answered questions, and it always led to 10 more questions.
Yeah.
And so it's not that ethically I'm not, I can't do that. But, from a practical standpoint, I can't answer 10, 20 questions from me just giving you one answer, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that, it's gatekeeping. Part of it is gatekeeping. The divorce industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. There's a reason that, lawyers and judges don't encourage people to represent themselves, because there's money in, that fuels the system by hiring attorneys and guardian ad litems and experts and all of that stuff. So that's one of the reasons why attorneys won't do that. So what are some of the insider secrets? Number one, I tell people, I'm going to give you 5. Number one, I tell people, if you are going to meet with attorneys, wait until you calm down. People get served with papers. They run to an attorney. They're emotional. Well, guess what? You know what you just did? You just gave this attorney carte blanche to basically charge you up the wazoo, because they see you're desperate. They see you're emotional. A lot of them play off of that. Whether it's good or bad, a lot of them are going to play off of that. Calm yourself down. Give yourself a 24, 48-hour waiting period and then go see an attorney. Number one, you should always do that. Number two, a lot of the things that attorneys know about the process, they won't tell you. They won't tell you because then it'll lead to not only more questions, but it'll lead to them needing to be transparent and them needing to have a strategy and that you're going to stick to, where they don't want that to happen. Because you know why? Strategy for attorneys changes every day, right? Good, bad, or indifferent, it changes every day. If I tell you a strategy from the first moment you walk into my door, and then I tell you the same strategy 3 months later, and then I tell you the same strategy 6 months later, despite what's happening, you're going to be disappointed in me, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of attorneys won't do that. The other thing I tell people is, if you're going to be the one to start your divorce or custody petition or case, do that yourself. Start the process yourself. Please, you can do that. You know why? I can't tell you the number of people that have come to me and said, hey, I've given my attorney $7,500 or $10,000 retainer fee a month ago. Nothing's happened, but they exhausted the whole retainer. Now I'm getting an invoice for another $10,000. Well, you know what? A lot of nothing does happen, but they still exhaust it by doing research, by doing, the paperwork. Do that yourself.
Yeah.
Do that yourself. And then when you're ready to go to court, if you want to, then yes, then you get a lawyer involved. But you can get a lawyer involved after you've started the process yourself. And that's one thing lawyers rarely will tell you. They want you to come to them and do it from day one. You don't have to do that. Yeah. And number 4, almost anything you need answers to are on the court's website. Letting your lawyer bill you $350 to $600 an hour for answers you could find on your own just from going to the court's website is kind of counterintuitive. But they won't tell you that because guess what? They want to bill you, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the last one, because I got a million of them, the last one is I think is important. When you're getting those invoices from the attorneys, you need to really audit them. You know why? I had someone tell me last week that their attorney gave them a bill for $7,000 and they didn't understand what they did for $7,000. And she went to the attorney and said, hey, I can't afford this. And the attorney said, well, how much can you afford? And this woman said $3,500. And she didn't say 35. She said 3,000. And the attorney said, okay, I'll take it. You know why? Because that bill was probably padded anyway.
Right? Yes. Yes.
And, it's not that they're doing it with malicious intent, but I mean, I did it. I billed for things that I could have let go, but I billed it anyway because I knew there was a 90% chance that my client would come back to me and tell me that they couldn't afford to pay it. And so I was willing to go down.
Yeah.
A lot of attorneys do that. So,
which I think is another reason for advocating for yourself, right? And do the pro se, because then you don't have all those issues, right? You can do some of that work for yourself.
Absolutely. And doing the work, even some of it, you can be pro se from filing to finding. You can be pro se for specific parts of your case. You can be pro se while you're looking for lawyers. Being pro se doesn't mean you need to be pro se from filing to finding, right?
Yeah,
if you're being strategic, you can choose when you're going to get a lawyer involved. And getting a lawyer involved doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hire one to retain you 100%. Because when you do that, you give up a lot of control. You can actually hire an attorney on a limited scope basis in some jurisdictions, do unbundled tasks for you. That way, you're not giving up all that control. You're still pro se, but you still have the supervision or the guidance of a lawyer. And then or the other option is you can work with me. I work with people who are pro se and lawyer represented. Of course, the services I provide for both of them are a little different because when you have an attorney, I'm usually serving in the capacity of just filling in the blank. There's a lot of legal voids that attorneys create that litigants need to have filled. And that's why I step in that if they have a lawyer. But when you're pro se, I get to do a little bit more hand holding. But I represent both. And because a lot of times there are a lot of legal voids, blank spots, gaps that are left open, which actually creates a lot of the problems for
Yeah.
litigants in family court and family law. And so that's what I do. I step in. And so, those are options too. So you could be pro se, you could be lawyer represented, or you could be, have a little hybrid situation going on. So those are
Yeah.
options.
Well, again, that is so empowering, right? You have choices because too often we think, well, we don't want to do it ourselves because that's big and scary the whole time. Or we feel like, and maybe, we're leaving a situation that's not the greatest, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, we're scared of our spouse or we're scared of what's going to happen or, whatever, for whatever reason. So now it's like, it's not about you have to have an attorney right from A to all the way to Z. Now it's like, okay, well, let's strategize. Let's look at what the judge wants. Let's look at, let's gather some evidence. Let's give you some actionable plans so that you can do some of these on yourself, which I
Absolutely.
think builds up so much self-esteem and, the
That's what I want.
willpower and, okay, I can do this. It just takes away a lot of that victim mentality.
Absolutely. And that is me. If you ever meet anybody that knows me, that have known me since I was, mature enough to speak, they will tell you that I'm always wanting to actually give people back that power,
Yep.
especially getting out of that victim mode, that victim mentality. Yes, that is and actually what's most fulfilling for me doing this kind of work is that, is when those people, my clients come back to me and say, hey, you know what? I didn't win in court. I didn't get exactly what I wanted, but you have no idea just working with you, how empowering, how confident I felt walking into that courtroom.
Yep.
That alone was rewarding enough. And that's what I love. That's exactly what I love, why I love doing this.
Yeah, because even if you decide to have an attorney, to be there and know what's happening and to know, have it taken a part in your case is huge. I mean, that's so
Yeah.
important. Rather than just like, I'm just going to sit here, my attorney will just speak for me and I have no idea what is that? What are they saying? Right? It just is so empowering.
A lot of people do that, though. A lot of people hire attorneys just because they're intimidated by speaking up in court. And whether it's because they've been, in an abusive relationship or they have their own trauma to deal with. But I think for me, honestly, I think that is so catastrophic. That can be so disastrous because you're giving everything. You're already been giving your power away, your whole marriage, your whole relationship. And then you're at the, you're fighting for your life, your kids' lives and your future. And you're going to continue to keep giving that power away. At some point, you have to reclaim that, right? Victory and success in family court is not getting a judgment or decision that says exactly what you wanted to say. It's actually accomplishing set out goals that you set for yourself. And it doesn't have to be your goal for today or tomorrow. You should be looking down the line. You should be looking long term when you're in family court. And that's the best time to start. I always tell people there's silver linings. I know you're in a storm, but trust me, there's silver lining. There's a rainbow at the end of this. I guarantee you. I've been in this field 25 years. I can assure you.
Yeah, absolutely. So share a powerful story of someone who has successfully represented themselves using your strategies. Do you have one?
Yes, I love this guy and he knows who he is. And I'm always talking about him, but he was amazing. He was amazing because one thing I realized, let me just tell you a little background. Last year, I decided to shift my pivot a little bit because I used to work with anybody who was pro se. But as of last year, the end of last year, I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore because one of the ways I can really help people is by working with people who are willing to help themselves, right? And a lot of people who are forced to be pro se, they're still stuck in victimhood. They're still stuck in victim mentality. So I screen them harder because I don't want to force them to try to work on healing and transformation and all that stuff if they're not ready for it. And a lot of people are not ready for it. They're still, somewhere in the grief cycle that they don't want to, they're not ready for that. And that's fine. So I realized as a result of him and 2 other clients that I worked with last year that there are some people who are ready. They want me to help them. They are ready to make a difference. They're ready to take control. They're ready to strategize. They're ready to do the work and be persistent and determined. And this one guy, he had a case in California and he was fighting for custody, 50-50 custody, I'm sorry. But there was a domestic violence issue. And in
Mm-hmm.
California, that automatically precludes you from having joint custody or 50-50 custody unless you do a hearing. You have to do a hearing to prove to the court. And it's like a mini trial. You have to do that to prove to the court that you are deserving of 50-50. So it meant the world to this guy. I met him. He was such an amazing person. I absolutely love him. And working with him, he made me realize why I do this. He made me understand the things I need to work on myself to make sure I am better equipped to help people. We prepared for his trial. We did a little role playing. We did research. We found some case law. We did discovery. We did every aspect of his case to prepare for it. He did a lot of the legwork, but I refined it for him. He was organized. And guess what? He emailed me. I think he emailed me and told me, Tracy, I got half 50-50
That's
custody of my kid.
amazing.
Yes, yes, yes. He is my poster child. He knows it too because, and you know what the beauty is? A few months later, he emailed me and said, hey, I'm applying to law school. Can you write a reference letter for me?
What? That's
Yes, yes.
amazing.
I need to touch base with him to see what happened because I haven't talked to him in a few months, but yes, yes. And so, yes, but you know what I like? I love people to challenge me.
Mm-hmm.
I love people to challenge me to better myself, to sharpen my skills. He was that person because he was ready. He came with his game face on every time, and I had to perform. I had to be on 10 every time. And I learned and I grew so much from working with him. And so, yeah. And there's some that didn't turn out that way. There were some people who were disappointed. And that's the reason why I decided to stray away from people who are not ready. And I
Yep.
actually, since then, I created better screening tools to screen people to not only help me decide if I want to work with them, but to
Yep.
help me figure out which areas they may need more work on that have nothing to do with the legal and the strategy part of
Yeah.
the case. It has more to do with the emotional or the mental. And I'm not certified in any mental health, but I'm able to refer them to somebody if I really think that that's what they need. And so, yeah, I'm way more responsible now with, addressing those issues because before I was like, oh, I can help anybody. I don't care. I can do it. I can do it. And it's just not, you can't help people who just don't want to be helped. And, no offense to them, no judgment to them, because we've all been there. We just want to be in that pity pool for a minute. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's like, okay, yes, yeah, yeah, I understand. You went through trauma and you're kind of emotional hot mess right now. So let's get you to a place where you can be, you can help and I can help you. So let me refer you out and let's, get some help and then come back to me when you're ready. I love that because you're right. There are some people who are just not there. They're just not ready to strategize because they're still stuck in the emotional trauma of the whole situation.
And I do think that that's why a lot of lawyers will choose to treat some of their clients a certain way because a lot of lawyers do have good intentions. And then they realize that their clients are stuck in certain cycles,
Yep.
which makes it difficult and much more challenging for the lawyers to do their job effectively, that
Yep.
they do start to, avoid them or, distance themselves from them. Although they will still handle their case. And so, even whether they're going to work with me or not, I always encourage people, hey, get your emotions in check, work on that. If it means getting a therapist, a divorce coach, a support group, do something to help yourself work on that before you go out there, because that's what's going to wreak havoc. That's what's going to destroy your case if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what are the 5 things that can destroy a family court case that no lawyer is going to tell you? Give a
One
little
of those,
teaser for your free guide.
yes. So that's one of the things, not getting a handle on your emotions. You have to do that. And you have to treat divorce like it's a business. You have to be very factual, very, very organized, very, on point. Like you have to be very objective. And so lawyers will tell you that, but that is one of the things that they won't go into depth and say, hey, well, I'm not responding to your email or your text messages because you're too emotional. But that's what they're thinking a lot of times.
Right.
Yeah. So you really have to work on that. Another thing is, one of the things that I often talk to people about is family court is replete with enemies. You think the other party is your enemy. You know what? Guess what? They're the least of your concern. There's enemies all in the family court.
Yeah.
I mean, the key players are your enemies. And I don't mean that they have malicious intent against you. I mean that you're fighting against them too. You have to watch them too.
Yeah.
It's not just the opposing party. It's the opposing counsel. It's the judge. It's the judge's clerk. It's the court reporter. It's everybody, because they all have a different objective. They all have a different motive, and they're not always going to align with yours.
Right.
So you have to look out for yourself. You have to question everything that matters, not everything that doesn't matter. You have to understand what matters, and you have to question, you have to analyze those things. So, and people don't see that. They think it's just a battle between them and the other party. And that's not what it is.
Right. Right.
Another thing is people go to court and they're thinking, I'm just going to tell the truth. I'm just going to tell my side of the story, and that's going to be it.
And that'll win the case. It'll be
that'll win the case.
Right.
The lawyers are going to, they're not going to, it's going to shut them down. No. There's your truth. There's the other party's truth. And then there's the truth that the judge is going to summarize on their own.
Yeah.
And so when you're going to court, tell the truth, of course. But the problem a lot of people have is when they're telling their truth consists of bashing the other party or talking negatively about the other party, or they think they're being factual by explaining or describing the other party's behaviors and antics in a negative way. And someone literally told me this a few months ago. I said, you have to tell your story in a neutral way. You have to tell your facts in a neutral way, in an objective way. And she said, my facts are objective, though. If it's my story, it is objective. I said, no, it's not.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not. You think it is. And that's the problem. A lot of people think that. They think, oh, well, it's my version of the facts. It is objective. And so I gave her an example. I said, tell me your story. Cut her off. First 5 seconds. I said, everything you just said, you should never walk into a courtroom and say those things.
Yeah.
Don't tell your story that way. You could tell your story without identifying something negative or detrimental or impactful that the other party's done. Just tell your story as if you're telling it to someone who's writing a piece about you that has nothing to do with anybody else but you. And she got it. She got it. So I think that's really important for people to understand. There is a difference.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, judges make decisions about you based on the way you look, based on the tone of voice you have, based on the way you make facial expressions, based on the way your body language, or when you're in court, all of those things. They only have 5 minutes to hear your case. Mm-hmm. They're not listening to facts. They have to make a decision in 5 minutes that's going to impact your entire life. Yeah. They're going to use everything they can to do that. And it may be prejudicial. It may not be fair. It may be biased against you. So why not understand that and use that to your benefit? Yeah. And that's exactly what I work on with a lot of people, because they don't think that, judges are human as well. Judges do make decisions. I've been in several courtrooms where judges made decisions just from looking at the paperwork that a pro se litigant submitted. They looked at the paperwork and said, you know what? this person is full of lies because look at all these errors, or look at they didn't follow the rules, or they looked at. How does that have anything to do with the substance of what's in the petition?
Right.
Well, it happens. It happens. And the other thing is, judges don't remember you, so they don't.
Right.
They don't
Yep.
remember the facts of your case. So take advantage of that. If 2 months ago you were in court and the judge yelled at you and screamed at you, and it works both ways, actually, yelled at you and screamed at you, and you're thinking, oh, I have court tomorrow, this judge is going to be mad at me still because of what he or she said to me 2 months ago. Judge doesn't remember that.
That's good to know.
Judge doesn't remember that. But it works in the opposite for you too, because you can go back, you can say, the judge yelled at the other party, and everything that the judge admonished the other party about, guess what? That other party has been doing all those things that the judge told them not to do. And so you go back to, and it's not in the order. It's not in any court orders. It's not written anywhere. It's just something the judge did verbally, orally. And so you go back to court and say, Judge, you told him or you told her not to do A, B, C, and D. And guess what? He or she did A, B, C, and D. Remember you told them that, and the judge's like, well, I don't remember that. But anyway,
yeah, right.
And so it works both ways. But either way, depending on which side of the table you're on, understand that. Use that. Everything that happens in family court, use it. It's all resources. And some people will always tell me when I suggest something or recommend something, they'll tell me, oh, well, family court is all broken. It's all corrupt. It's all this. I said, okay, so what are we going to do with that information? That's what I do as a strategist. I take that information and I use it, right?
Yep.
We're not going to ignore it or deny it or run away from it. We're going to use it. That's part of my game plan, is knowing all those things about family court are bad, wrong, destructive, negative, everything. We're incorporating that into our overall strategy. That's what a strategist does. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so you talk about belief and mindset, and how important is that in comparison to legal knowledge?
Oh, mindset is incredibly important. Mindset is the basis for everything you think, everything you speak, and everything you do. Mindset is the underlying reason why you choose to take a certain route to get to your why you continue to fight for your why. It's your mindset. It's those values, those beliefs. It's all of that. It's your mindset. And that's exactly what I meant when I was telling you about the people that I decided that I couldn't work with, because their mindset, they wanted to stay stuck in a space that wasn't going to allow us to move forward. And so if you have this stuck mindset as opposed to a growth mindset, I can't work with you. I have resources for people like that, but I can't work with them until they decide that. And some people change. Some people do make a shift, and they come back. They circle back to me and say, hey, I'm ready now. I wasn't ready then, but I'm ready now. And I totally get it. But now I'm much more picky about and selective about who I work with. But mindset is the key to everything. It's the motivating factor for everything we do in life. And being in family court and family law is no different. If you don't, and some people are not even aware of their mindset because they're so stuck in, fight, flight, or fear, or whatever form, or whatever stage they're in, that they can't even, grasp where they are mentally. And so I actually encourage a lot of my people to do mindfulness exercises to help them, get out of that space and into that mind, get to a different mindset to help them.
So what do you recommend for the mom who is really not of the right mindset, but she has family court coming, and so she's got to do something? So what do you recommend?
I'm very spiritual, so I always recommend spiritual practices based on who I'm talking to. It could be binaural beats of solfeggio frequencies. Sometimes I'll just tell people to have an object in their hand and to hold on to it and use that as a sort of like a peace or a calming stone to help them. It doesn't have to be a calming stone. It could be anything. There's all sorts of, sometimes I give them things to read, or I'll send them videos, or I actually have coaches that I might refer them to. We could do some I do breathing exercises with them. I'm a
Yep.
Reiki 2 level, Reiki level 2 certified, so
Yep.
I can do that with them as well. But when it comes to mindset, again, I will often recommend that they either get a therapist or a coach, whether it be a divorce coach, a life coach, a mindset coach, whatever, or they join a group. There's a lot of groups out there now to help people. And I don't necessarily think people should spend their time when they're looking for support, working with people who've been through divorce, or who, I don't think so, or who are currently going through divorce, because a lot of that is just perpetuating that that energy, and sometimes that's not a good thing.
Right.
They need to get away from that. So a lot of times I will tell people, hey, go ground yourself and walk on the beach or walk through the park barefoot. I mean, whatever it takes, because whatever it takes to get you to be present and to trust that the universe or your God or whoever you believe in has you and you'll be fine. That's what I'm going to do. That's what we're going to do. Again, some people, I am mindful about who I say certain woo things to, because I don't want my message to get lost in translation, because I'm doing
Right.
that. So I
Yep.
usually gauge people. I do all my meetings on Zoom. So I usually gauge people to see how amenable they are to that. And I'll make a recommendation based on who they are or what I know their beliefs are. But yeah, that is
I
big
love
for
that.
me.
I love that. And I think, um, any step that you take, even if, say, you have court next month, any step that you take from now until the day that you have court, if you're not in that great mindset, right? Any therapy, any people that you're watching, any books that you're reading, like that is getting you on the way. And so that when you go to court, even for that first time, even if you're still a hot mess, at least you're a warm mess, not a hot mess anymore, right?
Exactly.
So like
Exactly.
anything that you're doing to
Exactly.
help is going to help. So
Yes.
just don't give up and think, okay, well, I'm hopeless. No, there are things that you can do to propel yourself forward. Moving forward, every
Absolutely.
step you take is a step forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm really careful to not try to give them therapy myself, because I
Yeah.
don't want to muddy those waters. But I do, because I know, what some of those exercises entail, I will say to them, hey, you might want to explore this. I have books, and I have tons of books that I actually recommend to people
Yeah.
to help them get to
Yeah.
that space.
And
So
like I
yeah.
said, you have people that you can refer them to, therapists and other people that, are
Yes.
good.
Yes.
So what is one piece of advice that you wish every parent going through a custody case could hear?
Oh man, I wish they would understand that the best interest of the child does not mean your version of the best interest of the child.
That's good.
The other parent doing what they're doing, or allowing your child to do what they're allowing your child to do, does not mean that they don't have your child's best interest at heart. They
Mm-hmm.
just have a different way of thinking about the best interest. We all have our own childhood trauma, or whatever that affects how we parent. At the same token, some of us just have you know childhood references or frames of references that we can refer to use to actually guide us and as we parent. So just because your co-parent chooses to allow your child to stay up past midnight, or to eat junk food, or to
Right.
go outside without a coat, that does not mean they don't have your child's best interest at heart. They
Right.
just express it differently. Then there's a third level. There's a third interpretation of the best interest, and that is the judges. The judges is not going to align with you nor the other party. The judges have
Right.
their own idea of
That's
what the best interest of the
true.
child. I'm telling you, the judge has their own idea. That's exactly why I always tell people, I always bring people back to that. If you don't know your judge, you don't know anything about your case. I don't care how much procedure, law, anything you know. If you don't know, you can't tell me anything about your judge. And I do that often. I will put that out there on social media. Hey, tell me about your judge. And you'd be amazed how many people don't know squat about their judge, and they've been before their judge for months or years. You have to know your judge. You have to
Yep.
know your judge.
Yep. I love that. I think, as long as it's not something illegal, right? As long as they're not drugging them or allowing them to stand
That's
up in the
different.
back seat with no seat belts or
That's
whatever,
different.
like then you need, even though it's different, it does not make it wrong.
Right.
They may not do homework right when they get home. They
Exactly.
may do homework later. Your child may have eaten an entire hot fudge sundae before they came to your house. It does not mean that other person's a bad parent.
Absolutely. Pick your battles. Pick
Yeah,
your battles. Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so you're a strategist, a blogger, and a podcaster. How do you stay grounded while juggling all these roles?
I am very spiritual. So I start my day setting intentions every single day. I set my intentions on how I'm going to act, what I'm going to accomplish, how I'm going to react, and what I'm going to do. And 90% of the time it works. There are days where everything gets thrown into chaos. But again, I will use my own mindfulness practices to help me along the way. If you could actually see a scan of my brain, you'd probably see like all kinds of things because my brain is always going. It's always going. And I am a scatterbrain. I'm all over the place. But at the end of the day, and it's because I'm always forward thinking. I'm always thinking of the possibilities, sky's the limit. And
Yep.
so, but at the end of the day, I usually bring it all together and, make sure I've accomplished what I said I was going to accomplish for that day. And so that usually helps me get through. And again, the same way I start my day, I end my day. I pray, I meditate, and I, make sure I sort of bring everything back to homeostasis so that I can, sleep well and start the next day all over again. Most of the time, there are days where everything again is thrown out of whack, but for the most part.
Oh, totally. Okay, so you have a podcast called
Yes.
Self-Represented Family Court. Tell me a little
Yes.
bit about that. What kind of stories
Oh,
do you have? What kind of features do you do? What is that?
it's just me, and it's a discussion format because right now I'm really focusing on getting the message out. Pro se is a viable option. Pro se, you can succeed. You can quote unquote win being pro se, whether you be pro se the whole time, pro se for bits and pieces of it, hybrid situations, working with somebody like myself, but you can do it. I've seen it done. I've helped people do it. It's done. So that's what I talk about. I talk about that and the challenges that pro se have because family court still deters pro se. Someone told me last week that her judge told her she could not be pro se. And so things like that. And I said, are you an American? Yes, I am. Okay, you have every right to be pro se. There's a thing called
Yeah.
the Constitution that gives you that right. So I'm always talking about things like that. I'm informing, not just pro se, but the public at large, because part of it is the pro se litigants, but the other part is the divorce professionals who need to respect and acknowledge pro se litigants. They need to respect and acknowledge that there are people who choose to be pro se for their reasons. And I'm going to tell you, Lisa, the divorce industry is changing with the introduction or the influx of all these AI tools. I can assure you that people choosing to be a pro se is going to skyrocket because they don't have a reason to spend $30,000 anymore. They could spend a fraction of that and still get the same outcome and not have to deal with the disappointment and and everything else that comes along with spending $30,000 on a lawyer. So that's what I use my podcast on, to inform, to enlighten, to motivate, to inspire, to educate. Not like, again, not just the litigants, but the public and divorce professionals as well. So
I love that. And I love, so that just to kind of marry something that you said earlier, right? Don't go to your friends who have been through the divorce. Come and listen to your podcast so that you can get informed and kind of get empowered in what you need to do and be with other people who are in that same category as you.
yes, exactly.
So,
That's it.
for someone who's just discovering your work, what is the best way to dive in and start learning from you?
Go to my website and listen to my podcast. My website, I have so much content on my website. My web guy is actually organizing it a little better, so let me hold off on that. But I have my podcast is very, very enlightening. I have a group that I run on Facebook called Strategy for Pro Se Divorce and Custody. I have my book is coming out by the end of May. I have a course that's going to everything that I've ever talked about in the last 4 years is in this course, because the way I disseminate information is not just the self-help style.
Right.
It's about being strategic. Everything I talk about, I'm giving you some strategic ways to look at it and
Yep.
understand why you need to be strategic about looking at it. So it's very analytical. So I have that coming out, and I have a surprise coming out that's really going to be helpful for people who need my guidance but can't really afford to, because my packages to work with me 1, 3, or 6 month basis start at $1,700 and they go up to $9,000. Not everybody can afford that, so I have other options. But if they want to get a taste of who I am or what I do, listening to my podcast, go to my website and just poke around. There's quite a bit of information on there. Join my group. Follow me on social media, and yeah, you'll get, because I'm very vocal. I'm very, very vocal. I am a native New Yorker. I don't, mince words. I'm very, I have thick skin. So, yeah, so you'll see that reflected in all the content and information I put out there.
Absolutely. And then if you look in the description, you will see the link. So you could just click on that and see what you got going on there. So that's good. All right. Lightning round. One myth you wish to bust, one truth everyone needs to hear, and one thing that you're most proud of.
One myth that everyone needs to hear. Does it have to be family law related or anything?
Anything.
Oh, wow. I don't think we should treat people the same. I think we need to treat people based on who that person is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that I need to treat every person that I come across the same exact way, because they may not receive it the same exact way. And I've been told that I'm a bit much for a lot of people. And that's because I don't know how to, pretend. I treat you based on what I think you can receive. So,
Yep.
and I think that's what we need to do. We're all individuals. We're all different. We all have a story. We all have demons we're fighting. We all have internal conflict. We all have insecurities. So I think one of the ways to make people feel heard, accepted, acknowledged, important is to treat them based on where they are and what they need, as opposed to just, being callous to you and being the same way to everybody else when you're different individuals. And so, yeah, that's one myth that I think, oh, treat everybody the same. No, I don't think so. I think people should be treated based on who they are. Yeah,
I
if that
love that.
makes any
What
sense.
is one truth that everyone needs to hear?
Whoa. Everything is not about you.
What?
Everything is not about you. Yes,
Right.
that person that did that, it wasn't about you. How can you say it wasn't about me? They made me feel. No, they didn't make you feel. You chose to feel.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
chose to feel. Everything is not about you. As I said, every one of us are fighting demons that other ones don't know anything about. We all have internal conflicts. Sometimes it's just me dealing with that internal conflict that you saw manifested externally, and you took it to mean that I was inflecting that or intending that to reach you, and that's not the case. Everything is not about you. It's not about
I
you.
love that. So what is one thing that you're most proud of?
I am proud of who I am today. I am proud of who I am today, because I went through a lot. I suffered a lot of losses, and I went through dark periods and questioning myself, my
Mm-hmm.
purpose for being here. And now I'm proud because I understand why I am who I am, why I'm here, my mission for being here. And I'm proud that I finally forgiven myself, accepted myself, and I'm on that path, that mission, and no one or nothing is going to stop me. So I'm most
I
proud of
love that. That
myself.
is amazing. Okay, so final encouragement for that mom who's sitting at home, feeling pretty overwhelmed, getting ready to go face family court, or in the back of her mind thinking, it's probably time that I separate or divorce my spouse. What kind of encouragement can you give her?
Your biggest fear is the unknown. That's your biggest fear. But
Mm-hmm.
guess what? That fear, you can turn that fear into adventure, into excitement. You can make your life anything you want it to be. You already know what it is now, right? Get on the other side of fear and decide, yes, it's scary, I'm terrified, but this is exactly what I'm planning on doing. And do it. Take baby steps because it can be done. It's been done. Relate this to something else in your life that was really traumatizing and scary and dark and all that stuff. And remember what got you through that. Well, multiply that 10 times and do it now. Because if you are someplace where you're unloved or unappreciated or disrespected, there's nothing out there in the unknown that could be worse than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you're aware now. So you know what it looks like. You know what to avoid the next time around. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you did get through it. And
you
you'll
got
get through
through it.
this too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the fear.
I
I hear
love
that
that.
often. It's the fear of the unknown. I'm just so afraid. We all are. But guess what? Fear that shouldn't, you don't let fear control you. You control it. Take control of it and say, this is what I'm going to do with fear. I'm going to use that to fuel how I move from this point on. And do it.
Yep. That is good. So much good stuff today. So if you want to look up Tracy and see what she has going on, you really like what you hear, there will be a link in the description. Also, don't forget to subscribe and like this podcast because it's just been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Tracy, for being here, and maybe we'll check in with you later.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.